Horse keeps hugging pregnant woman. When doctor looks at ultrasound, he calls the police. Any horse owner will tell you that horses can pick up on things that humans can't. Their sixth sense allows them to detect energies and emotions that we elude with our five senses. An English woman named Jolene Jonas experienced this when she found out that she was pregnant. She and her fiancé were really happy, but they couldn't say the same for their horse. Their horse began acting really strange. They decided to go to the doctor, just to be sure. But when the doctor saw the ultrasound, he immediately called the police. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. When Jolene and Ricky first heard that Jolene was pregnant, they couldn't believe their luck. They already tried for a few months to get pregnant, so when the good news was finally there, they were really excited. But not everyone was as excited as Ricky and Jolene. Their horse Keola thought otherwise. While everything proceeded according to plan during the pregnancy, Keola soon began to act really strange. He started to constantly hug Jolene and would often even try to lick her belly. At first, Jolene and Ricky ignored the horse's weird behavior, not realizing what Keola was actually trying to tell them. Suddenly, at 23 weeks pregnant, Jolene experienced a sharp pain in her back. This pain was so bad that she couldn't walk, so Ricky rushed her to the hospital. The doctor told Jolene he had to do an ultrasound. When the doctor saw the ultrasound, he was shocked, and he had to call the police immediately. But how did they end up in this situation in the first place? Jolene and Ricky were together ever since they were 16 years old. They moved in together after they both graduated from high school. Jolene had always wanted a horse, so soon after, Ricky bought her one named Keola. But their relationship wasn't perfect. Like every relationship, something was still bugging Jolene. The couple was slowly building their lives together over the next couple of years, but there were still some things that started to bug Jolene. There was a thought lingering in the back of her head, something that Jolene had trouble with from the very first moment she met Ricky, up until the present day. She and Ricky had been together for years by now, but he was still very secretive about his past. This was something that Jolene worried about more and more. What could he be hiding from her, or what was so difficult for him to talk about? They had known each other for so long, so why didn't he trust her? Jolene had asked him to tell her about his past on multiple occasions, but was always met with the same kind of reluctant responses. Ricky claimed that he had no family anymore and that it hurt too much to talk about everything. He just wanted to forget about it all. At this point, Jolene had just accepted it as the reality of the situation. Ricky had been this way ever since she knew him, and he was probably never going to change. But luckily, this secretiveness was one of the few flaws Jolene had in her eyes, and she could live with it. When the pair had been in a relationship for about 10 years, they decided they were ready to get married. They finally had the money to get married to make it a wonderful day. Jolene couldn't help but hope that she would finally meet some of Ricky's family at the wedding. But maybe not to Jolene's surprise, but definitely to her disappointment, Ricky had only invited his friends to the wedding. And it was also only the friends he had met in the time that she knew him. Not a single person was there that had known Ricky before he moved to the city at the age of 16. But overall, this didn't really bother Jolene that much. They had a great wedding with or without his family, and they had it fairly good together in general. Emotionally and romantically, they'd never been this close. Therefore, they decided to take another step. They wanted to expand their family, but that didn't go as planned. They embarked on this journey with hope and excitement, but they soon found out it wasn't so easy. At first, they struggled to even get pregnant. Ricky and Jolene began to doubt themselves. Maybe there was something that they did not know about their health condition? They decided to see a doctor. The doctor did some tests to check if everything was all right with both Ricky and Jolene. After the tests, the couple had to wait a few days. The doctor told them he would call them with the results. However, when the doctor called them, he told the couple to come to his clinic instead. Now they got nervous. When they arrived at the clinic, they were anxious. What if they were unable to get pregnant? Luckily, the doctor took away all the tension. He ensured them that they were both completely fine and healthy. After all, Ricky and Jolene were relieved. And more good news was on its way. Only a week after their medical checks, Jolene found out that she was pregnant. It was like a gift from heaven. They were thrilled with this news and shared it with all their loved ones. Everyone was obviously very happy for them and wished them all the best, except for one. Their horse, Keola, did not seem very happy with the pregnancy. In fact, she even started to act a bit weird toward Jolene. It started with Keola trying to lick Jolene's belly, but later it began to do other unusual things. It became so strange, Jolene even got scared of Keola's behavior. At a certain point, Keola started to constantly hug Jolene, and it wasn't just a soft, gentle hug. No, the hug was quite aggressive, and she did it every time she saw Jolene's belly. They couldn't figure out why. Did he feel threatened? Or was there something wrong with Keola herself? To make sure everything was okay, they went to see the vet for Keola. Maybe she was signaling that she did not feel okay. The vet did some standard medical checks, but could not find anything that was not okay or wrong. So Ricky and Jolene were back to square one. But Keola's behavior didn't stop. In fact, it got even worse. Jolene didn't know what to do, so she decided to Google this strange behavior. If the doctor couldn't help her, maybe the internet could. But when she read some websites that elaborated on this strange behavior, she was shocked. She could only cry. Jolene couldn't believe it. Most of the websites told her that something was off with her own baby. Jolene obviously panicked, but she did not want to tell Ricky about what she had found. So she decided to seek comfort from another person, one who she trusted with her whole heart. Jolene went to her mother to gather some advice. She did not know what else to do. Her mother had always been her biggest supporter, so she thought that she, out of all people, would be capable of giving her appropriate advice. And she got exactly the reaction from her mother that she expected. Her mother told her not to get carried away with the things she read on the internet, as they are often quite misleading. She told her daughter she had to follow her gut and decide together with Ricky. It was his child just as much as hers, so he had a right to know about this. So she did just that. As Ricky and Jolene wanted to make sure everything was okay with their baby, they went for another medical check. Jolene was already 18 weeks pregnant, so the doctor could definitely tell them whether the baby was okay or not. They returned home and, in fear, they waited for the test results. After a few hours, the doctor called Jolene with good news. Everything was all right, so they had nothing to worry about. He told her to come back when she was 25 weeks into her pregnancy for a new ultrasound. Maybe Keola just had to get used to not being the only family member anymore. But a few weeks later, they found out that that wasn't the case. At 23 weeks, Jolene suddenly experienced severe back pain. She did not feel all right and told Ricky that they had to go to the hospital. Jolene told him that it felt like she had to give birth already. Ricky didn't think twice when Jolene asked him to drive to the hospital. But there was one thing that stopped them from going as fast as they could. It was rush hour. Ricky did everything he could to avoid the traffic, but eventually they got totally stuck in traffic. Ricky saw only one solution to get to the hospital as fast as possible. Ricky called an ambulance. Since they were stuck in traffic, they would be here for quite a while. An ambulance had the right to go through the traffic. After a few minutes, they could hear the sirens in the distance. The ambulance arrived and Jolene was able to go to the hospital fast. At the hospital, the doctor immediately wanted to make an ultrasound to check whether everything was okay with the baby. But during the ultrasound, the doctor's facial expression changed. He actually looked quite shocked. As soon as he was done, he said something that worried Jolene. Have to call the police. Jolene was obviously shocked by this. Why would he get the police involved? And why did he not tell what was going on exactly? Jolene and Ricky as well became angrier and angrier about the whole situation. Why were they keeping them in the dark? When was this going to end? After a few minutes, the police arrived at the hospital, and they immediately asked Ricky to come with them. Sir, we have some questions for you about your wife. Ricky couldn't believe this was happening. What did they want to know about her that they couldn't ask her in person? At first, they seemed to ask regular questions. They wanted to know their age, who Ricky and Jolene were, what they did for a living, and where they lived. But soon after that, the tone of the agents changed. They began to ask unusual questions, which shocked and confused Ricky. They asked not only about who they were, but also where they'd been the last few weeks. And after that, they began to ask strange questions about their pregnancy. Why did the police want to know things about something so personal as Jolene's pregnancy? It didn't make sense to Ricky. Not only was Ricky surprised by the questions, but he also got a little bit angry at the police as well. Why did they want to know all of this? In the heat of the moment, he said something which the police did not appreciate. "Go and do your job, but leave me alone," he said. But he soon regretted that decision. The police didn't like his reaction, as they deemed their questions reasonable for their investigation. Therefore, they took Ricky with them to the police station. Ricky panicked, as he did not want to leave his wife alone in a hospital who may have to give birth in a few hours. Unfortunately for Ricky, he had no choice and had to go with the police. They promised him that they would explain the situation when they got to the station. But at the same time, Jolene panicked as she saw her husband leaving the hospital with the police. The doctor came to Jolene with terrifying news. "We have to do surgery," said the doctor. It was necessary for their baby. The doctor couldn't tell more at that moment, since he was instructed by the police not to tell her anything. The doctor told Jolene that she did have a choice, however. She could choose whether or not she wanted the surgery, but she did not have to think long, as it would be better for their baby. She immediately said yes, without even knowing the potential dangers. Now she only had to wait for the surgery and for her husband Ricky to get back. After a short hour of waiting, Jolene was brought into the surgery room. She hoped Ricky would have been back by now. Meanwhile, Ricky got to the police station where the police asked more questions. They seemed quite simple, but after a while they took Ricky to an interrogation room where it got way more serious. Ricky obviously got angrier and angrier. He wanted to be with his wife, but they treated him like a criminal. First, he had to go to the police station and now into the interrogation room. What was going on? He could not figure it out. But then, the police finally explained the situation a bit more. All of a sudden, on the other side of the window, there were 5 criminals standing next to each other. Ricky had to say whether he recognized someone or not, and to his shock, he saw someone familiar. All Ricky could think was how this person ended up in a police cell. It was his own doctor. But why was he there? As soon as Ricky told the police that he recognized his own doctor, the police gave him some more context, as it was very strange for Ricky to be in this situation. They told Ricky to sit down and listen carefully. This was very serious. The police told Ricky that Jolene's doctor found an illegal medical chip inside her body. This chip could regulate the medicines needed. However, this wasn't legal yet. And since the doctor put the medicine in Ricky's name, he was taken to the station. Now everything made sense, but this wasn't the end of it all for Ricky. As Jolene was still in the hospital, Ricky rushed himself to the hospital. Thankfully, the police were able to drive him back with their sirens on so they could avoid more traffic. But when Ricky arrived at the hospital, he couldn't find Jolene anywhere. Where could she have gone? Ricky panicked. Was everything all right? Then he saw Jolene's doctor. He ran towards him, grabbed him by the shoulders, and demanded to see his wife. The doctor asked Ricky to be calm for other patients, but Ricky struggled with that. After a few minutes of anger, the dust settled down, and the doctor could finally tell Ricky where Jolene was. The doctor told Ricky about his findings, not knowing Ricky already knew what was going on. She had a medical chip inside her body that needed to be removed as it was illegal. But Ricky still didn't know whether the baby was all right. The doctor asked Ricky to follow him. Ricky followed the doctor all the way to the surgery room where Jolene was. Ricky ran to his wife, who was still a bit out of it, and kissed her on the forehead. After that, he immediately asked the doctor whether she and the baby were okay. Luckily, the doctor had good news. Jolene and the baby were both perfectly all right. She did not have to give birth yet, but they only needed to remove the medical chip, which probably was the reason for the severe back pain. Jolene had to rest for a bit, but after that, they were allowed to go home. After 40 weeks of pregnancy, Jolene finally gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Julia. After all, this was a good story to tell their newborn daughter when she would be older. Next to that, Jolene and Ricky learned to always listen to the instincts of their horse. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.